Welcome, welcome, welcome. Well, Peggy, if people are here tonight, I think that means we got accepted into college, so that's a big deal,
That's a
right? We're
huge deal. Multiple colleges, I'm sure.
multiple colleges, so in a lot of ways, we're playing with house money. We're trying to see can we get some more house money, is what we're looking for. So that's our job tonight is to help everybody get some more house money. If you're new to us, welcome, welcome. We're towards the end of our journey, at least our high school journey, getting ready for college. But if you're new, welcome. Hopefully, we can still help here. If you're an OG, if you're a groupie, welcome back. Um, and for our groupies, for our OGs, you know the deal. Tell us where you're at in the country, in the world. We're assuming just about everybody's 25, class of 2025 tonight, but put in the chat, tell us where you're from, where you're tuning in from. But I also want to know, which colleges are we going to or considering trying to appeal for more money? Tell us what colleges we're focused on. So BU, we got a $50,000 appeal at BU already this year, right? We got, let's see, Northeastern. I saw USC, Kutztown, Northwestern, amazing schools, right? Villanova, Wesleyan, UW, Peggy.
Dub.
We got Boise,
Yep.
we got Penn State, we got Syracuse. All right, all right. So American. I saw Spelman in there. Wash U, middle of the country. There we go. Binghamton, amazing. Case Western, awesome. Case Western, people don't. I know that's a big deal in the Midwest and the Cleveland area, but we always talk about that, regardless of where you are. That school doesn't get enough love. Uh, um, okay, UMass Boston, Georgia, amazing, amazing. Congratulations, everybody. Honestly, these are incredible schools. So you guys have you've done a ton of work to get to this point. And again, our job is, can we put a little icing on the cake? Can we help you get these last kind of two steps right? And when we say two steps, we mean going back to these colleges. And I saw Howard, Texas A&M, and appealing for more money, right? Can we get it a little bit better of a deal, maybe a much better deal than you have already? That's our focus tonight. And then the next step, you guys got to keep paying attention, is even if we have a successful appeal, how are we going to pay for this bill, right? If we have resources, if we have savings, when do we use what? If we have to borrow, what loan should we take, especially this year? That's more mission critical than ever. So we're not going anywhere, right? But just make sure you keep paying attention. By way of quick introduction, my name is Matt Carpenter. I'm a founder at College Aid Pro. This is kind of my favorite thing to talk about, I would say, of all the many, I don't know, benchmarks along this college process. Trying to go back to colleges because number one, you've been accepted, so it's like exciting. It's real now. So that's just kind of fun. But can we squeeze some more money out of these colleges, right? And that's always very, very gratifying. So we love this stuff. I know Peggy does too. We got a ton of frontline experience. It doesn't matter if it's a big school, small school, state, public, private. That's what we're here to talk about, and obviously answer your questions. So, let me kick it to. And by the way, I'm in our kind of our corporate headquarters in Salem, Mass. Here, but we're all over the place. Geographically, Peggy's on the other side of the country, just outside of Seattle, otherwise known as the fairy godmother, financial aid, the budget queen. Peggy, say hi.
The total nerd out here. Yeah, yeah. So this is really a fun topic to talk about, and actually, it's a great way to really reduce your cost. So it's very gratifying when we're helping families, and even $1,000 difference can mean $4,000 over 4 years. So it's a fun part of the process, and it is a part of the process. It isn't like an anomaly. It isn't something you maybe shouldn't do. You should definitely be doing this. So we love educating around this, because just like everything in life, there's a right way and a wrong way to do things. And we've been around the block over and over and over again. So we're super, super happy to be here to dig in on this. I already saw this question in the chat. So yes, this is being recorded. You will get the recording via email. So if you want to watch it again, get distracted, yada, yada, you're good to go. The other thing we'll ask and we'll remind you is, please, we love questions, so hit us with your questions, but please put them in the Q&A as opposed to the chat. That's where we're gonna live. You can be anonymous, so pop them in there, and we'll do our best to answer them. And as always, for our groupies, stick around till the end. We always have special coupons and deals for our live audiences. So, and we're very good at finishing on time. So we respect your time. So let me share my screen here and we will kick this off. So Matt said he is one of the founders at College Aid Pro. This truly is our mission. This is what gets the two of us out of bed every day. And that last part of it, by empowering families to shop smarter for college. If you've been in our ecosystem, you've heard me say this over and over again, but it just really is, it really is the truth. It's so important for you to be here at events like this and to understand the world you're in, right? Because there's just a lot of it that's counterintuitive, and there's missteps that can happen that can literally cause you tens of thousands of dollars, cost you. So that's why we're here. And I know everybody will get at least a tidbit, if not a lot more out of this tonight. So there we are, the happy couple. Um, Everybody got an email today. A lot of you are already in our world. You already have your MyCap account set up. A bunch of you went ahead and did it, which is great. If you haven't yet, definitely go ahead and do that. Matt's going to put a link in the chat. It's super helpful. Matt's going to go in there later. You can upload award letters. We're going to translate them for you. And then we're going to tell you, like, is this a good appeal opportunity? So we take you through the whole step of the whole journey here, each step. It's not just for sophomores and juniors that are building a list. It really goes all the way through how to pay, which Matt referenced. That's our next webinar. That's kind of the final before you're waving goodbye at the dorm. So go in there and get that done. There's about 3 or 4 minutes of onboarding questions. If you don't know all the answers, don't worry about it. You can go back and change them at any time. You can update them. So easy peasy to get in there. Okay. So for people that like to kind of have an agenda, this is where we're going tonight. When, who, should, and how to appeal. We're going to hit all of these. So when? We are well through this timeline at this point. We do this presentation way back even in the fall for kids that applied early decision. So that's why we've got it in here. But you are down. There might be people on here that already appealed and you didn't, you feel like you should get more. You can appeal again. We've had some really successful appeals that have been a second appeal, maybe nothing the first time, or maybe something and appealed again. So you might not have appealed yet. You might be at 5 or you might be at 7. So wherever you are, it's all good. We're going to walk you through, how to do this. So before you appeal for need-based aid, you get what's called a financial aid award letter. This is your child's offer, if you will, from the college. And so it's going to have different things on it. I'm going to show you a few examples and maybe how things can be a little misleading, but there's typically, if applicable for your family, there could be grants. Grants are the need-based free money that comes from the federal government, the state, but most of the time it's institutional grants. So that means the college. The college is meeting some of your need, or all of it maybe, with their money. And this is where that student aid index, and when you set up your MyCap account, and all of you that are in there, you know what your estimates are, which, that's the tip of the iceberg. You've got to know that stuff to move through this whole process. Second bucket is scholarships. That we're using the term scholarships to describe merit-based money. So that means based on your child, grades, test scores, talents. Some colleges use the term scholarship when it's need-based. You want to make sure you understand that in the award letter, because merit scholarships are almost always offered for all 4 years, as long as your child maintains a certain GPA. Need-based is not. It's assessed every year. So if you win the lottery, you get a promotion, you're very likely you're going to lose your need-based aid or some of it, right? So you've got to understand which is which if there's any ambiguity and you don't know. Then work study, that's a federal need-based aid. Your child gets a job, the government's paying half the wage, half the hourly rate basically, and then loans. When you see loans, okay, this is a financial aid award letter, because merit announcements can quite often they come from Office of Admissions, but they're not that award letter, and people think it is. Okay, so let's look at a few award letters. I'm going to move around my Zoom stuff here. So this is University of Southern California, USC. So they tell you their full sticker price up here. So that's great. They do a nice job of itemizing the breakdown. Here's all the pieces of the cost of attendance. And then they say, okay, so there we are. That's the total that we're at now. And then they itemize work study, student loans, and other loans. So they've quite a large number here for other loans. What we're not seeing here, if we were in person, I would ask, what we're not seeing here is grants and scholarships that I just talked about. And then I want you to see how USC kind of represents this. They say, well, that's your remaining cost. So you went from 97,000 to 44. That's quite a reduction. And then they say, hey, you got financial aid of 53,212. Well, what you got from them is federal money. And most of it is loans, except for 3,250, that's work study, which your child has to do. They have to go get a job and they have to work. So really, there's no free money here, okay? But it can be very misleading, and people don't understand that. They look and say, wow, I got $53,000. That's what I have to pay. In essence, you're paying everything except for the $3,250 that your child earns. So that's Southern Cal. Here's another one that's kind of interesting. This is Roger Williams University from this year. So they break down what's called your direct costs. So this is the stuff you're paying directly to the university. And then they say, okay, the indirect costs, books, because this is going to be different for every kid, right? Transportation, miscellaneous. So the total is the 68,174. Then they say, okay, and it's written out, direct cost minus the scholarships and grants. Well, this student got a presidential scholarship, which happens to be merit. So that's the difference there. Then this student was awarded the federal direct student loan in the unsubsidized version. And then down here, they say your estimated cost after loans is 35,134. But what they did in their calculating is they left out the indirect costs when they say it right here, but people won't read that. They'll just go and look at 40. And they'll say, oh, 40,000, when really it's more like 45, 46. These are costs that are part of the total cost to attend this university. So kind of misleading, and the total cost should be what they're using. So that's easy to miss that. And so that's a, 4,000 plus difference. This is an award letter that I just want to show you. This is a nice one because it shows all the different things that could pop up here. This was Drexel from last year. And this is why it's so important, as I mentioned, to know the grants versus scholarships. So the Dean Scholarship is merit. The Drexel grant is need-based, very, very nicely broken out here. This family is eligible for Pell. It was estimated because the FAFSA wasn't out yet, and another federal grant that we call FSEOG. Then on the second page, they nicely say, all right, this is our total cost. This is what you got, the free money. They make it very clear. That's your difference. Now we're telling you, well, yeah, you're getting work study, you're getting a subsidized loan and an unsubsidized loan. So it makes it clear what really is coming out of your pocket. So that's the example of a nice one. And then the loan piece and the work study piece is clear too. Now let's talk about who. So there's two different types of appeals, and I kind of hinted to this a minute ago. There's merit appeal, so that those merit scholarships, that's always going to be to the Office of Admissions, because the Office of Admissions is where they come from, right? If you appeal to financial aid, they're going to say, go talk to admissions. We didn't give you that. We can't assess competing offers, etc. If you have a need-based appeal, that's going to go to the Office of Financial Aid, because again, that's where that aid comes from. And can you do both of these? Potentially. We do have families that we help that sometimes, admissions will come earlier in the process quite often. And if there are competing offers and it makes sense to appeal, I can go ahead and appeal right off the bat. They don't have to wait for that financial aid award letter. And then sometimes that comes, and even with the merit, or maybe there wasn't merit, they can do a bona fide financial aid appeal as well for need-based aid. So now, should you appeal? Let's talk about good, kind of ideal candidates for appeal, and then maybe, if you're making a generalization, not so good. So typically private colleges are going to be better to appeal to than state schools. Not all the time. And we help with state appeals and they are successful. There's certain times when it'll be more successful than others. But in general, private schools are going to be better. If you have anything in the year you reported on, so we have a lot, I'm sure we have a lot of class of 2025 families here, mostly parents and students. You reported on 2023. So if anything happened in 2023 that was funky, that not if it made your income lower, if it made your income lower, leave it alone. But if it made your income higher or your picture looked better as far as your wealth, that should be an indicator. Hey, I need to appeal. Sometimes people take retirement distributions could be for hardship reasons or certain reasons. You're going to want to let the college know, like, that was a one-off thing that needs to be pulled out. If you're divorced, separated, or remarried, there's a lot of nuances in this process that you need to be looking at. Sometimes colleges, if you've got a divorced family and both people have remarried, they look at all the people, all the parents, the stepmom and the stepdad on the other side, when technically they're not supposed to. There's certain things in there that we help people with all the time, but that can bring nuances that mean you should appeal. And you want to watch the next one, it's like IM versus FM. What that means is FAFSA, schools that only require the FAFSA versus schools that require the FAFSA and the CSS profile. They do things differently. They follow a different methodology. And so they might dig deeper into tax returns on the IM side, the CSS profile schools. And I would guess everybody on this webinar, your child has at least one school that you did the CSS profile for. If you didn't, you're lucky because it's a pain. But you want to keep that, in mind. If you're a business owner, really, really want to look into it, because these colleges will literally look at your tax return and they'll look at some of your business deductions and say, yeah, we're adding that back. Yeah, I know Uncle Sam gives you a break on that, but we're not going to. And so you've got to understand that, because, and we just had one the other day, one of our pros chimed in and said, hey, they were looking at the person's business return this way, and we let them know that's not the way to look at it, and boom, it was like, what was it, Matt? It was like 25 or $30,000. I think it was Brown, more money because he knew to look at that and look at the return, and then in the correct way talk to the college.
Yeah,
And
it
then
was
last but not
30K
least,
more at Brown. Yep.
what, Matt?
It was 30K more at Brown. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Then competing offers. This is very relevant, mostly on the merit side, but if you have competing schools, and Matt talks about this, if you're a groupie, you've heard this, that we strategically have kids apply to competing schools way ahead of the game, because when we get to this step, we want to be able to leverage that. So those are good candidates for appeal. So now let's talk about, if we're generalizing, not so good. So as we've said, privates are good. State public schools, not so much. If you have had no change in circumstance, if you lost your job, absolutely, you should be appealing everywhere to let them know. Remember, I said, if your financial situation is worse, that's always a trigger to say, hey, we got to be appealing to every school and explaining that in the appropriate way. I will say with state schools with merit, like, I'm outside of Seattle. ASU, Arizona State, University of Arizona, I've bounced them off each other many times and gotten more money. They're competing schools, even though they're state schools, it worked, right? So it doesn't mean never, but if you're an out-of-state kid applying to Penn State and they didn't meet your need, there's a very slim chance that Penn State's going to come to the table with grants for you if you're a Washington kid, right? It's just not their business plan. It's not the way that they do things. So that gives you an idea of good versus bad candidates when you're doing this. So I am going to turn it over to you, Matt, so you can pop in and talk through the key things that people need to understand to be able to appeal effectively.
Yeah, there's been some great questions, guys. Please keep them coming. And just a reminder, put them all in the Q&A. I'm sure some people are jumping on a little bit late, so you didn't hear us say at the top to put your questions in the Q&A as opposed to the chat, because that's where we're focusing our efforts here. So, Peg said this at the top, and let me just make sure I get my the right account teed up here. But the first thing that you guys need to do when you're thinking about, appealing, is have some type of basis for, whether or not you got a fair shake, right? Did you get a good deal from the college you're talking about? And again, I put this link in there earlier. Let me put it in the chat again. So for those of you that did not create your accounts, uh, you got to make sure that you do this, right? Because the first thing that our platform is going to do is say, okay, did you get a good deal? And more importantly, if you did not, it it's kind of good to know at least, all right, this is a fair deal from this college based on our situation. Even if we don't love it, this is a fair, quote unquote, fair deal, right? Now, it doesn't mean we're not going to appeal. We appeal all the time, basically always, even if we've got the offer that we would expect to get given our family situation, given the student, and given the college. But you want to have that framework, because the fact of the matter is we can draw a very straight line to how sophisticated is our appeal to how successful is it, right? If at all, right? There's a reason why when you work with a professional, you're more likely to have a successful appeal and probably get more money, etc. Because you know that inside baseball, right? Exactly why are we appealing? How are we appealing to who at this college? And then how much should we be asking for? Right. So for those of you that have created your account, or even if you haven't, this is just kind of a good visual here to say, okay, well, here's my SAI, the student aid index, basically the foundation of the dollar amount that, number one, colleges that use this formula think you can afford to pay per year. And then this is what you see on the FAFSA, right? So you guys have kind of seen what the Department of Education, the federal government thinks you can pay, or your foundation there. You don't get to see this. The CSS profile schools, or the schools like U Chicago or Princeton, you don't get to see what they think you can pay each year. This is helpful information, right? This is really helpful information, especially for schools that say they meet 100% of need. So we can have kind of, again, this insider information that we know how these colleges calculate what you should pay, and are they doing that, right? So the first thing that we're showing at this part of within the platform is what we would expect Boston College to award this family versus Carnegie Mellon versus, Columbia, Tulane, UCB, whatever it happens to be. Okay, so you can kind of have that framework there. So that's kind of number one. That's the first thing that we want you to do, and gut check your award, right? Versus what we would expect you to get. Now, Peg showed you a bunch of examples earlier. Oh, sorry, my thing's being wonky here. Where, and you guys are experiencing this in real time, or you have experienced it, where you're getting these offers and they're just confusing. They all are presented in a different way. There's so much text and numbers on the page that you're trying to figure out, well, what's a grant, right? What's a scholarship? What's a loan? What's work study? What am I going to have to friggin' pay to go to this school? Right. So that's the first thing that you're trying to figure out. Use our technology to simplify this for you. So this part of our platform is really powerful, where you're going to upload your offer, right? You're going to say that I got accepted into Northwestern, okay, or whatever the college happens to be, right? And you're going to take a screenshot of your award. You're going to upload it here. You're going to save it. And what we're going to do is we're going to put it in a, there was 900 different ways that colleges presented financial aid award offers last year, right? We're going to create one uniform apples to apples award letter for you. So you guys can look side by side. Take the confusion out. What's a need-based grant versus a merit-based scholarship? Now that matters, right? It matters because need-based grants can change from year one to year two to year three to year four, based on your financial situation, right? Based on siblings coming in and out of school. Okay. Whereas merit-based scholarships, we know, okay, well, that money's going to be there for all 4 years. That's kind of a constant, right? With very few exceptions. But more importantly, we're going to tell you, did you get a good deal? What is the likelihood that you can go back to this school and get a better offer. And we're going to give you an indication here, right? Is it very likely? Is it less likely? Less likely means you got a good deal, right? And then we'll give you some specifics. Why, right? Why, according to the information that we have, is this a very strong candidate for appeal? Now, Boston College, I can tell you on average, and this is basically part of their, business model, they under award families, need-based eligible families, about $10,000 on average. So our system will flag that and say, look, if you got $10,000 less than Boston College says, a family that has your kind of financial makeup should get based on how they say they conduct business. So we want you to ask for, $10,500 more, or $12,000 more, or whatever we say here. But it gives you a real framework. You have that level of sophistication to basically call out colleges, right, when it's appropriate. Because if you just say, "Hey guys, I want more money. We can't afford to send our kid there," that's not successful, right? You need to have another level again of sophistication, for lack of a better word, to go back to these schools. So leverage the technology. Make sure that you have a framework for what should you have got from this particular school. Understand what they offered, and then let it evaluate, is this a fair deal, right? And again, even if it was a fair deal, it doesn't mean we're not going to go back and ask for more money. We are, right? But again, that is something that we should be aware of here. And Peggy, if you want to tee up those slides, I can. Uh, okay, so another thing one way that we describe our technology is kind of like a supercharged net price calculator, right? It's one of the things that it does is it will predict, well, how much are you going to get from this college in need-based financial aid or scholarships, or maybe nothing, right? Another resource to consider is that every college, but it's one of the federal kind of rules, has to have their own net price calculators. We always just say buyer beware, right? Because most of these are unintentionally, right? There's nothing malicious as far as I know behind it, but unintentionally misleading. They're just not accurate. Um, but it's always worth checking a college's net price calculator, because maybe, they show you getting a better deal than you actually did. And this is something that when that happens, we'll want to include that in the appeal as well. So that's just, again, if you got accepted into Loyola Chicago and you got X amount of dollars, go use their net price calculator. And if it shows that you should have got, more than you actually did, that's one of the data points we would include in the appeal with, again, in that example, Loyola Chicago. So how do we do this, right? Like, what are the mechanics of this process? And, I'm just going to talk, you see some of the best practices here. Now, number one, I saw a bunch of, similar questions, and Peg kind of, hit on some of these earlier, like who should do the appeal? Is it the student? Is it the parent? Is it both? Again, guys, we have to do business as business is done. It depends on the college. It depends on the situation. But generally speaking, and again, if you tuned in a little bit late here, Peg kind of walked you through, if you're asking for more merit-based scholarship dollars, usually that conversation happens with the admissions office, and usually it makes sense for the student to drive that conversation, right? The colleges, specifically the admissions offices, they're investing in the student, okay, and they kind of hold the purse strings here. They don't want to hear from the parent, right? They don't want to hear from mom and dad. They want to hear from the student. If we're asking for more need-based financial aid and we're explaining that, hey, we want to challenge you on how you valued our business, on how you valued our home equity, on our one-time distribution from retirement, on our one-time bonus, it makes sense for the parents to have these conversations, and those conversations are happening with the financial aid office, right? And oftentimes, just like the slide said, it's both, right? We're doing both, but again, depends on the situation, depends on the college. These are, it's impossible to give universal kind of best practices and recommendations here. So I'm going to expand upon a couple of the bullet points here that you guys are staring at. The first one, tell your story, right? Add some color here. I mean, I don't want to, it seems obvious, right? But I always pick on our colleague. I can do that, right? Because he's my buddy. Ryan Callahan, he's a director of financial aid at Harvard. He's a freaking robot. He's a calculator. Okay. Very nice guy, but very serious. Very, again, just kind of by the numbers, by the book. And his job, right? And he's been in financial aid his entire career. He was with MIT before that, Boston College before that, somewhere else before that. But, and he always reminds us, like, look, I'm there crunching numbers. I'm an employee for my employer trying to figure out a way to make families come to a certain institution, make the math work for us, make the math work for the family, but it's very formulaic. What makes my job harder, and that's a good thing for consumers, is when somebody says the best day of our lives was when we got accepted into your college. The worst day was 2 weeks later when we got the financial aid award. And we're thinking we're gonna have to tell our kid that we can't send them to the school that they've, quote unquote, earned to attend. They did their job. Um, that's kind of the place you want to come from, right? That's the tone that we want to strike of just like we're trying to make this happen for our kid, but we need to spoon feed them data, right? I said it earlier on the platform. Make a specific ask. Don't just say I want more money. How much, right? And there's a science to this. A lot of this, it's part science, part art, of course. But there's if you ask for too much money, you're going to get completely dismissed, right? You're going to get laughed out of the ballpark, and they're going to say these people are ridiculous. There's no sense in giving them anything more. Their expectations are so wildly off. But we don't want to ask for so low. We don't want to leave money on the table. So, and again, that's very case specific. There are times when we will ask for 50,000 more dollars and we will get it, right? Of course, that's an outlier, okay? But we want to be again strategic with how much we're asking for. Okay, of course we want to support it with documentation if there's certain specific things that we want to challenge. I told you we need to do business as business is done. We need to make it clear that this college is our top choice, right? This is we are appealing to you because we want to go here. Now, of course, there could be some gamesmanship, right? Maybe we're doing this with two or three schools because they're all on the hunt. Don't do it with 10 schools, right? We always say like don't go through the efforts and don't have the college personnel go through the efforts if there's not a real intention to actually going there, right? You're only appealing at schools that or at least that's our recommendation, that you're serious about attending, okay? But again, of course, there could be some gamesmanship if there's two or three schools in the mix. And like we talked about earlier and Peg talked about earlier, we got to know who and kind of where to apply to specifically. Okay, Peggy, go ahead. Okay, and so these are just a couple of things that we are very typical for us to drill down on when we appeal. If there is a college that uses the institutional methodology, okay, and a lot of these consider home equity to be fair game. So, in other words, if you own your home, or at least some of it, let's say you own your home, it's worth $600, or sorry, $600, 600,000, you owe 200,000 on it. A lot of these colleges are going to say, well, that's a $400,000 checking account. We always want to challenge that. Okay, we always want to challenge that. Again, of course, there's a method to the madness, but we want to poke holes in that. If there's a change, there was a one-time spike in income. There's a change in marital status, right? We've been divorced or separated since our base income year, or maybe we're on that path. That is something that we want to challenge, right? Medical issues or just expenses like, hey, we take care of a grandparent, right? Or we take care of um, siblings or relatives that are overseas, right? And that those expenses don't show up anywhere. And again, we are always challenging if we're a business owner, especially at these private colleges, because these private colleges are going to look at our business tax returns. They are 10 times stricter than the IRS, right? And they're going to go in there and take liberties and say, no, we don't like that write off. No, we don't count depreciation. No, we don't think you had that much in consulting fees. No, we don't think you had that much in travel and expenses costs. They're going to make their own decisions, and all of that is going to be treated as untaxed income, which is going to raise your SAI and give them a justification for giving you less need-based grants. So if we're a business owner, we always have to appeal, and those are like Those are borderline layups as far as we're concerned. Um, and the other one that I would throw on here is if you're a family that has an underfunded retirement account, right? There's an appropriate way to bring this up to colleges that can also be very effective. It's not on here, but it should be, quite frankly. It just kind of popped in my head. Um, okay, Peggy, you can go to the next slide here. And I think I don't know, Peggy, is this your
Sure, I'll pop in here. So here's a few examples. This one is here's the before appeal here, right? So we've got the student got a scholarship and a grant, so need-based and merit-based money and some other pieces here. So a decent amount of gift aid. This family was sitting on significant home equity, and Occidental looks at that kind of as a checking account here. So we helped this family appeal to not include that. And if you look here, the merit scholarship stayed the same. Huge jump, because when you take that asset out of the calculation, they have more need. And so Occidental heard it, listened, and said, all right, that's valid, and took it out. So huge, really nice win there. So gift aid before 34 up to about 62, pretty good increase. Here's another one of our experts, Kevin Murphy. This actually involved two times because people have asked in the Q&A, should I appeal again? Kind of depends, we'd have to know more about your situation. But with this one, they were basically awarded the federal direct student loan. That's it, right? So really no money. And then look what happened after a couple appeals here. There was a scholarship total, and they're calling it a scholarship, but they're telling the family this is need based, it's not a merit. And then also these appeal funds, I'd be asking to make sure that's not just a one-off thing, but huge win, right? Went from 0 to over 44,000 in aid. This was a change in income situation, as we've said, anytime you have a change from 2023, that should be your big trigger to definitely be appealing. This was another one that I did a few years ago, kind of low income, but the assets. This guy was sitting on $1.5 million retirement, non-retirement, which is what they absolutely always look at. His income dropped, and he was disabled. He was blind to the point that he couldn't do his job that he had done in his career. So we appealed and basically said, hey, I'm a financial planner by background. So I was like, $1.5 million is not going to last you into your 90s. And he had a younger child to put through college too. And it was a massive success. Not at every school. This is where you got to understand. That's why casting a wide net is important. The one school came out big, another school came in the middle, and another school was like, thanks for sharing, but no, right? So that's where having more than one school to do appeals to can be really helpful. And they're all schools that your child likes. They're good academic and personal fit schools. Here was a merit. Somebody wrote in about Syracuse in the Q&A, received no merit, and reached out and just basically shared about their all different things around community service and leadership, and just was reiterating who they are, and they money, right? So they didn't even have an award to leverage. They still got $5,000 times 4 years, 20 grand in their pocket. That's huge. And then this year, here's just give you a quick idea of the schools. Obviously, these are awesome, these huge ones. I showed you BU. These aren't, this doesn't happen every day, but we actually are having quite a few big ones this year compared to last year, more. But as you see with the Syracuse one, 5,000, 2,000, 3,000 times 4 years, it's great. It's a great thing to for you to have. And the main thing to realize is this is, as we said at the beginning, this is part of the process. So you don't have to worry for a minute that the college is gonna be like, how dare you reach out? We're gonna rescind admission. That just doesn't happen. This is just a step in the process. And you just need to know about it so that you can leverage it. You can try and get some more discounts on top of discounts that you hopefully already got. All right. I'm gonna
all right,
stop my
beautiful.
share.
So look, a couple things here, and I'll keep the questions coming. We're gonna get to as many as we can. Again, guys, we're outgunned here, so we won't be able to get to them all. And I've seen a lot of great ones that are. We would just need more information, right? Is this a good case to appeal? Here's the nature of my business. I saw a few around trusts, right? Should I have disclosed this trust? It's irrevocable. Um, we need to dig in, right, before we can make firm recommendations here. But here's what I'm going to make a, you know, very firm recommendation that everybody take advantage of. And again, for those of you guys that show up live, we do this. Yeah, no, appealing cannot hurt your offer, right? That was kind of the point of the last slide here. Book an hour with one of us. Okay. Book an hour with one of us. If you book it tonight, it's going to be um, $50 off, right? It expires at midnight tonight, but book an hour for $50 off because there's going to be a few things that we can do here, right? Obviously, the first thing we want to do is let's help you get a better deal. And all these schools that you've shared, we have a ton of experience with. Now, you've heard us say a few times the big state schools are harder to appeal with. That's true. But one of our colleagues, his name is Mike Hinderman, right? He's the director of scholarships at University of Oklahoma. He's been in their financial aid office. He's been in there over a decade. That's his sweet spot is how do we go back to these big state flagship universities and get a better deal? Okay. So he's someone I would call it specifically, right? Um, Ryan Callahan's the director of financial aid at Harvard, right? He can't negotiate with Harvard, but he can negotiate with any other school. So if you're targeting some of these more prestigious schools, or in the Harvard realm, that's his first language. Josh DeMails, director of financial aid at MIT. JP, this cool looking guy with the beard here, he was a former director at University of Southern California, right, at USC. So that's his sweet spot. Everybody on our team has a ton of experience with this, and I think our biggest advantages, right? We have this hive mentality, right? So for example, we had a few folks that were, I know today we're appealing with WPI. So we're having these conversations as a team. Hey, I want to try to go back, for this family at WPI. What are best practices? What's the inside baseball with that school, right? We are always leveraging one another, right? Obviously, when we're, if we want to go to if we're talking about USC, we will ping even if it's not somebody working with JP, we will leverage JP. So these are the conversations, and Peg will tell you this. So we're having every single day as a kind of team behind closed doors, even though you're going to have one direct point of contact. So take advantage of that, guys, because we're talking about when we talk about ROI, getting a return on that investment, it's going to be freaking massive. Now, in addition to that, we got a ton of questions tonight around loans. Right? Actually, and Peg, actually, a couple of people called me out, rightly so, of the title for our presentation tonight was "How to Appeal and Borrow Smart for College," where we kind of goofed on that, and um, not an appropriate title in terms of the borrowing part. I promise you that's all we're going to be talking about in the coming weeks and months. Literally is going to be this borrowing piece. I think this is our last presentation around appealing. I'm pretty sure. We're just going to be talking about how to pay the bill and how to borrow. But in this hour too, you can talk about, okay, yes, I want to go figure out how to go back to Northwestern, NYU, whatever, and get a better deal. But also show me what loan should I be taking? Should I use my 529 up front? Should I spread it out over 4 years? Right. So book it tonight, get the $50 off, and you can use it whenever you want. Okay. Obviously, if you're appealing, you want to use it sooner and later. So all you have to do is within the link here, go to say book your appeals hour today. And again, you can use it for whatever you want. Part of this too is we'll review your FAFSA, we'll review your CSS profile. Did we make a mistake? That's incredibly common. And then when you go, let me make sure I know what the promotion code is. What is it? More 50. Okay. Um, I add the promotion code here.
Yeah, and I just put the link of what Matt was showing to get to this page because somebody was asking, where's the link? That this is where you want to go, what I just put in the chat.
Yeah, exactly. And then once you go on there, you put in the more 50, it'll take the $50 off, 249. And again, I'm not saying 249 is not a lot of money. I understand that, but again, what's at stake here, and this is just a smart investment for you, for your kids, and again, just make sure that you have an expert weigh in on, because we're going to be talking about more than just getting more a better deal from the school. Again, we want to look at your FAFSA, we want to look at your CSS profile. 75% of families make a mistake on one of those forms that ends up costing them money, right? We have access to loans that are not necessarily public knowledge that we can help you out with, to say, hey, here's how you can borrow at 2% while your kids are in school. That you're not going to Google that. You're not going to get that from Sally Mae or the federal government or whatever. So these are some of the types of things that our experts can offer. And obviously the main get here is get us more money for school, right? And that's what we're great at. And again, although yes, you'll be meeting with one person, you have access to the wider team here. So I know I'm aggressively pushing you in this direction, but that's because that's my level of belief. And that's what you should be doing. Um, yeah, thinking that 249 to make sure is better than not trying. Couldn't have said it better myself, Milton. Thank you. And absolutely, you can still appeal after you've made the deposit. Thank you for saying that. We should have a slide around that, Peggy. If you have not put in your deposit yet, do not put it in. Okay, let us meet first. Go through the appeal process. It's your spot is guaranteed until May 1st. So if you have not put in the deposit, please do not. Let us work on the appeal first. If you have, guess what? The dream is not dead. We can absolutely still appeal. Do we lose some leverage? Yes, but that's okay. We still have plenty of other, arrows in our quiver. And guess what? Oftentimes it makes sense for us, and we do. This is not necessarily commonplace, but we'll put in more than one deposit, right? Because that's what makes sense. We're not sure yet, and we want to see what these colleges come back with. So we're not necessarily just um, posturing when we tell colleges, like, even though we put in the deposit, guess what? We put in another one, and we may not go there. They don't love it, but that's not our we don't serve the colleges, right? We serve you all. So that's just kind of the deal there. Um, Peggy, any other closing thoughts? What else am I missing here?
No, no. I mean, and you probably said this, I was answering questions, but you don't, now is the time. Where I did a little workshop today for our members, and I said, if you haven't appealed, it is the time to do this ASAP. So go in there, look, and book it. A lot of times I'll say, well, if you're not sure you're ready to meet yet, you can just grab the discount. But with this, time is not on your side, because people wrote in and said, well, when do the colleges respond? They're all different. So when you appeal, you want to say, when should I expect to hear back from you? Some schools are, I've heard it already from parents, some schools are already saying it bugs the crap out of me. You won't hear until after May 1, and it's only when I heard this, it was April 7th. So I think that's BS, but some of the schools do that, but you want to ask so that you can appropriately follow up, but you want to get it in there. You want to get it in there ASAP so that you give yourself the most time, because you ideally want to hear back, lay them all out on the dining room table, and be able to assess where you're at after you get some successful appeals, hopefully.
Yep, 100%. All right, guys. So hopefully that was helpful, right? I mean, we try to, at least, if you're if you're going to do this on your own, hopefully have more ammunition than you did going on to tonight. Obviously, we're biased with kind of the results that we're able to produce for people. So we think it's money well spent, especially at the discount, to tag in, kind of inside expert here. But let us go prove that. All right, Peggy, my dear. Yeah, and guys, if we didn't get to your question, please don't take it personal. We're unable to get to all of them. Just uh, um, if you guys are all in the same boat, got tons of questions trying to make this happen at the end here. So please do not take it personal. And even if you don't book an hour with us, continue to follow along. If you're most concerned about how to pay the bill and when to use what resources and what loans to take, that's all we're going to be talking about again for the coming weeks and months. So again, please um, continue to follow along.
Yeah, stay tuned, because we will be kicking into that in no time.
Yeah, and so yeah, the link should be I just put the link to pay here, and let me put it. Yeah, and then this link is just has some more here, guys. So look at it. Let me just walk you through it one more time here. So this link I'm going to put in the chat right now. Okay. And then this is kind of the progression to sign up for it, right? You go to book your appeals hour today. Now, again, this could be your loan hour, this is whatever, however you want to use your hour. You go to book it here. Okay. And then you're going to add promotion code more50 right here.
Make sure you hit apply.
Then apply. You're going to see
There you
$50.
go.
And then when you put your payment information in, can you do the pay later there? I guess you can even do a pay later thing, but whatever. So you can do that too. Um, but once you pay, you'll get an email to schedule your your hour, right? So you get to pick your expert or say next available or however you want to handle that. And then if you have any, tech challenges, we have an amazing support team. You write into support at collegeaidpro.com and we'll take care of you.
Yeah, and you will get a follow-up email. Somebody's asking if we'll
The
send them the
recording.
links. Yes, we will send you the recording with the links so you can do it there too.
All right, Peggy, my dear. Good night.
All right,
Bye,
everybody.
Bill.
Have a wonderful evening. All right. Bye-bye.